What's up guys, this is PJ. I'm back with the last video in this series. The book recommendation series for the Enneagram types that I've created has been one of the most fulfilling creative things that I have ever taken on. And to be at number 9 is truly fascinating and incredible for me. And honestly, I don't know if I wasn't to type 9 myself, if I would have had the motivation to keep going, because I was so excited to get to this point, to type 9 and talk about the books that have completely changed my own life in the past 5 or 6 years, that I really took on self-development and working on myself and trying to become more aware, trying to become more conscious and live a more conscious life. The books that I have today are books that I can, firsthand say, as a type 9, if you're interested in my instinctual type, it's sexual or one-on-one type 9 with a wing 1. I used to think I'm a wing 8, but I have become more and more and more aware of my own perfectionistic tendencies within myself that really led me to realizing, no, I'm definitely a type 9 with a wing 1, not a wing 8. So today the books I have, with that understanding of kind of my type and my background and my personality type, the books that I have today are books that really helped me in my journey um, of becoming more aware, becoming more conscious, and really shining a light on the blind spots that my personality type had created for me. And the strengths and weaknesses that come with that personality type, these books really help you work on the strengths. Well, honestly, there are certain things that come easy to type 9s, and for time reasons, I didn't want to make this video too long and bring too many books that just allow the strengths to become stronger, and instead decided to focus on recommending books that help the blind spots or the weak spots get stronger, so that we can create a balanced sense of individuality within ourselves. That our weaknesses are developing and our strengths are right there, so that we are, as if it was a scale, we are evening and balancing out that scale. So the books I have today are to really help you develop the sides of your type 9 personality type that might not be as integrated and that might not be as developed, basically. um, I have a hard time saying that word. I have an accent. I'm originally from Iran, so that accent sometimes comes through. So that's just FYI, if you were wondering why is he saying that word like that. Okay, the type 9s are called the peacemakers of the Enneagram. And I remember hearing that as a type 9 for the first time, not knowing I was a type 9 100%, or not 100% being sure that I'm a type 9. Hearing the peacemaker, I didn't think I'm so peaceful to be a peacemaker, but realizing more and more what that means for a type 9, it really means that the type 9s value peace and harmony above all. They value not having conflicts, especially with people close to them, people that they deal with on a consistent day-to-day basis. They don't want conflict. They don't want too much of a argumentative, competitive sense of being in their life. So sometimes, just like any other type, they take something that's good, the desire for peace, the desire for harmony, and they overdo it. They take it to a fault. They want peace to a fault. So sometimes it's healthy to have conflict. Sometimes it's healthy to have very honest discussions with other people and say, hey, this thing doesn't really is not helpful for me. Or be honest about what you want, even if that rocks the boat. And those things might produce conflict, but in the long term, what they end up producing is a deep, deep sense of peace. Peace at any cost is no peace at all. And as a type 9, I firsthand experienced that and know what that means. And I don't know if that's a quote or something that I just came up with, but I realized that sometimes in life you have to be honest with who you are. and be honest about your needs, your wants, your desires, and your preferences. And know that speaking those things, voicing those things, being honest about those things is going to cause conflict. Don't even say it might. It's going to cause conflict with people around you because we are different people. We have different preferences and we have differing and opposing preferences sometimes. Let's say you become very honest with yourself and you ask yourself, what do I want? Who do I want to be? And you select a religion, or you select a political affiliation or party. And that decision that you make is going to be conflicting and is going to be opposing with what other people close to you and dear to you might have for themselves. So know that it's actually a very worthy cause to your spirit, to your soul, to your development as an individual being to be honest with those, even if they cause conflict. Because when you are honest with who you are and you show up as your authentic self in the world, yes, it's going to cause conflict at first, but what it's going to do over time is that not only are you going to look in the mirror and say, I am who I truly am. I am who I truly feel and believe I am, versus what other people want me to be, which is, for me, I think for a long time, I wanted to be what other people thought is a good person to be, or a worthy person, or is a person that is going to get approval from other people. But it's a lot more fulfilling when you can look in the mirror and go to sleep at night and know that you are living authentic to you. You are living in accordance to who you deep down feel like you are. So yes, over time or in the short term, it's going to cause conflict, but it's in the long run, it's going to produce fruits of peace, of true satisfaction and fulfillment in life. Not what I was saying earlier about peace at any cost is no peace at all. Peace at the price of your authenticity, at the price of your soul, that peace is not worth it. The price for that peace is too high. And that's why it's a lot more worth it to be who you are. Say what you think, believe in your values, believe in your preferences, and be okay with that. Be expressive about those. And if conflict happens, so be it. But know that that's going to lead to a much more fulfilling life. And I know that it has done that for me. Being more honest about myself, being more honest with people around me about what I like and who I am and what matters to me and what values do I have. What principles, guiding principles do I want to live my life by. Being honest about those has led to better relationships, closer connections to people around me, a deeper connection to my own spirit, feeling like, who I show up in the world as every day is true, is real. I can go to sleep at night knowing that I live today fully and authentically as myself, not what somebody else told me that they want me to be. And there's a deep peace that comes from that. There's a deep satisfaction that comes from that. And that's why I've chosen the books that I have chosen today, because these books truly helped me reach that state, reach that fulfillment. And obviously, it's a work in progress. Some days I'm better at living the principles that I've learned from these books. Some days I'm not. Some days I'm a mess. I'm falling and reverting back to my old ways of people pleasing, wanting to put on a face of, let me just be who people want me to be so that it doesn't cause conflict. But once you have tasted, once you have lived what it's like to be yourself, there's no going back. You can try to go back to sleep once you have awakened to your authentic self, but it's not going to be as easy. You're going to deep down know that if I am living from a people-pleasing place, if I am living from my type 9, tendencies, personality types tendencies, you're going to know that it's not as good as it could be. Now you have known and seen how good it could be. One of my favorite spiritual teachers online, his name is Phil Good, he says, suffering is not knowing how easy it could be, how good it could be. That's true suffering. If you guys haven't checked out Phil Good, he's phenomenal. I think you might resonate with his content if you resonate with our channel and my channel. So I am going to start with the book recommendations. I have more books to recommend in this video than any other one, and I am sorry but not sorry, because I am a type 9. So these books, speaking for every other type, it was more about, speaking based on what I know about those types and having encountered those individuals in my life from those types, and then thinking what would be most helpful for them. So, the list of the books that I recommended might have been shorter, but in this one, I had to only check with myself and think, as a type 9, purebred type 9, what books have helped me the most, and then recommend those. And it was hard to keep it to these number of books, but I've chosen 7 books to recommend today, and either any one of these books can truly change your life if you're a type 9. So I'll be starting with the book number 1. The first book is a book that I've already talked a lot about in many of the book recommendations that I've done. And there's a very good reason for that. This book is super powerful. It's changed the lives of many, many individuals around the world, and that's why it's been a best-selling spiritual book for many years. The reason this book is a book that I've recommended so many times is because, to me, doing what this book teaches us to do and coming back to a centered place within ourselves in the present moment, that is truly one of the first foundational steps in any journey of self-development that you ever take on. Because if you can't be here, be in this moment, truly present in the moment, and observe yourself, what's going on within you, what's going on in your mind, the thoughts that are passing in your mind, if you can't get to that grounded, centered place, then your work of self-development and self-realization is going to truly be hindered. Because one of the first steps of any journey of self-development is that inner observation, is coming inside and being with what's going on and being honest with ourselves. And what this book teaches, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, the material in this book truly help us come to the present moment, come back to the now, realize the power contained within this now moment. And from this now moment, from here, we can start our journey. One of the things that Eckhart Tolle, I remember reading this book for the first time, maybe like 7 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago. I remember reading something in this book that at the time I didn't really understand, even though I could logically and rationally understand what he's saying, but in my experience it didn't feel true at the time, because I lived so much in my head and in the future and the past. But he said, life only happens in this present moment. Any moment in your life that you have ever experienced, you have experienced it as this present moment, right? So we do think about, past, a memory in our mind or something that happened to us when we were a child or whatever, but that was in the present moment at that time. And at the time when I first read that, it was almost like it was just like a thought in my mind versus a visceral experience of present moment in my life. But years later, through meditation, through practices like Qigong, which is a practice that I love and do, through those practices I learned how to truly understand, and not only just mentally understand, but viscerally in my body feel and understand what it means that life only happens in this present moment. There's no other moment but the present moment. So coming to that place is the first starting point of our journey of self-development and evolution as a spiritual being, really. So I recommend this book as a first step for type 9s. And this book is one of those books that kind of talks more about the strengths of type 9, because type 9s are pretty good at going with the flow, being at ease and being in the present moment. But still, as a type 9, you can be very stuck in your head. Just like, I was a type 9, but I was very stuck in my head and didn't really know how to connect to my body. And, type 9s are actually, they could be very disconnected from what's going on inside themselves, because they're so focused on, what other people want and desire. So they are disconnected from inside themselves. That's why one of the main reasons I chose this book is because Type 9, the journey of evolution and growth for Type 9 is to get in touch with within themselves. What's going on inside myself? What do I want? What are my goals? What are my dreams? What are my, passions and purpose in this life, and so on and so forth. So this book really helps build on the strengths of Type 9, which is being calm and present, and then helps you cultivate those by helping you get more in touch with inside of yourself. And from there, we can go on to the other work that we can do. And the reason I chose the other books, they're going to help you build on the foundation that the Power of Now is going to help set. So the second book is also another book that I have recommended many times already in this series. And there's a very good reason, is because this book, even though I've only been reading it probably in the past year, but it has been very eye-opening and revolutionary in my journey, especially when I read more about Type 9 and learned more about my type. There is, the beauty of the Enneagram is this. It's like, yes, it talks to you once you realize your type and like you read a type description that really speaks to you. Yes, it does talk about certain things that you already know. That's why you're like, this is my type, because you already know those things about yourself to be true. But there's more, right? It shines the light on what certain elements of your own personality that you might not be seeing. Because it's almost like, hey, most people that are of this type, that are similar to you, that their personality is similar to yours, they also have these tendencies. And so even if you're not aware of it, just by knowing that mold, knowing that type structure, and knowing where you fit in the whole Enneagram system, then you can become aware of those blind spots before life forces you to look at those blind spots. Because I do believe, and this could just be my subjective opinion, but I do believe life constantly wants to help you see your blind spots by the experiences that it brings into your life, especially if you're committed to understanding the truth about yourself. And it's almost like life wants to tilt your head and make you face certain blind spots so that you can become more integrated, more whole. And with the Enneagram, it's almost like you can predict where your blind spots are before life forces you to look at them, which a lot of times is not pleasant, because it's happening through like having a triggering reaction to something, and then you realize, wow, like I've never looked at that. That's why it's causing so much trigger, because it's completely alien to my experience. And so yes, this is the book that I'm going to recommend right now, Boundaries by Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend. I've recommended this more than I can even remember now in this book recommendation series. But definitely I recommended it for Type 2, I remember, and I recommended it for Type 7. I don't know if I've recommended it more times than that, but Type 9s, for sure, Boundaries, this book, and the concept of boundaries in general is going to be so helpful to Type 9s, because going back to blind spots, about how these books are to help you see those blind spots, and the Enneagram in general helps you see your blind spots. Having personal boundaries, right? Having a sense of identity of who you are, not who other people around you tell you you are, or or society has told you you are, because it's like you have to have boundaries. You have to know your border, and then from there come back inside that border and say, okay, this is me. Because Type 9s, they tend to merge with other people, and I've had this experience as a one-to-one bonding sexual Type 9. And if you're not familiar with the Enneagram lingo, sexual is like one-on-one bonding is a new term for it. But basically, it's an instinctual type where you tend to bond with one person closely. And so being a Type 9, also combined with that instinctual variant, it definitely caused in my own life a sense of like, I am who my closest friend is. So most of my life, I would have a close friend or a close relationship. a one individual that I was super close to. And, I would think that I have these authentic desires and preferences and dreams and goals for my life. But then over time, when I really became honest and really started seeing and doing the work that the Enneagram begins for us, I was like, oh my God, so much of what I want and so much of who I think I am is really this other person that I'm close to. It's what they want. It's who they are. It's what they like. It's not me. I'm different than them. And boundaries and having healthy boundaries it's a step in a child's development stage. A child, as it's developing, it goes through different stages, and one of those stages is becoming more aware of their own boundaries. A child that's very young, they might not know the boundaries between them and their mother. So they're so close to the mother that they think they are one with the mother. And as they age, they're like, okay, wait, no, like I am separate from the mother. I am separate from these other people. I have, a boundary within myself. I can feel certain feelings, and those are my feelings. These are my thoughts. A type 9 individual really hasn't had a good boundary development stage. They might have been close to a parent or close to a group of people. So boundaries are very important for a child's development, healthy development. And so having boundaries is one of those things that type 9s need some more work developing, because it's almost like they have a hard time knowing where they end and somebody else begins, especially somebody that they're very close to. It's almost like, is what I'm thinking and what I'm wanting really what I want, or is it what the other wants, the other person wants? And so boundaries, understanding where do I end, where does the other person begin, what do I want? And the tagline for this book is when to say yes and when to say no to take control of your life. And so for type 9s, they tend to also be, we tend to be very people-pleasing sometimes, because we don't really know our own preferences and wants as well. So it's almost like we're saying yes, we're saying no, or not really saying no that often, honestly. We're saying yes a lot to things that might not even be what we really want. But because we haven't become clear about our desires, our wants, our preferences, we are not really saying authentic yeses. And one of the things that this book helps you understand is, until you can't say no, especially for those people-pleasing type 9s, that they want to keep everybody happy and stay away from conflict. When you can't say no, when you're afraid to say no, you're not really saying authentic, true yeses ever, right? Because the whole idea of saying a yes is that you have an option to say no, and you chose yes. But if your only option in your mind is saying yes, if you can't say no, then you're not saying a real yes. And so highly recommend checking this book out. It can truly change your life as a type 9, because you learn to say authentic no's, authentic yeses, and understand who you are by understanding your boundaries. They keep using the metaphor of a yard. You know your yard from your neighbor's yard through the fences, through the boundaries, right? You know what's your responsibility. You know what's yours to control, and you know what's the neighbor's, to control and manage. And understanding, okay, what am I responsible for? These feelings, these thoughts, like, where do I begin? Are these emotions, the emotions that I'm feeling are my emotions, or am I just picking up the other person's emotions, the people that I'm close to emotions, or thoughts, or beliefs? So, okay, understanding where do they end and where do I begin, and what's mine to manage? What are my actual beliefs? What are my actual thoughts, emotions? All those things are so healthy for type 9s to feel through and think through and develop healthy boundaries, because until you build healthy boundaries, you're relating to other people and you're connecting to other people from not an authentic place, right? Because you haven't said, this is who I am. So you're just like this, like, it's almost like you're like a faded version of yourself that doesn't have clear boundaries. So it's almost like when you get close to someone, then you start picking up so much of who they are, and they're relating to a version of you that's the version of you that you use when you're close to them. And it's almost like that it has characteristics of theirs into your identity, and they're relating to a person that's very pleasant to be around, but is that who you really are? Um, a lot of times type 9s might not say, what they really believe about something, because they are afraid that that's going to cause conflict and separation as a result if they say what they really think, what they really believe. I've been in many situations where there were like these opposing viewpoints between friends of mine, and then I would just take everybody's side. Like, oh yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with that. It was almost like I had no boundaries, no clear understanding of what do I believe within me. Not what I already know the points of other people really well, but what do I think? And that's a question that you need to have healthy boundaries in order to be able to answer. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is very similar to the gifts that you gain by developing healthy boundaries, and it's a concept that I wasn't really familiar with until this last year, and through my awesome, beautiful girlfriend's recommendations. She has recommended to me so many awesome books because she's really into psychology, and being close to to someone, it can really magnify where you're strong and where you're weak at. And so she was like, you can really benefit from this book. So she recommended it to me, and I've been reading it. Sorry that I keep bending over. I was trying to keep the books out of frame, so it's kind of a surprise. But this book, I mean, every chapter, it almost like I can't even get out of my chair after reading every chapter, because I'm like, if somebody just showed me this earlier, if somebody just told me about this concept earlier, this would have saved me so much heartache and trouble and pain. But sometimes we do have to go through those pains to realize how valuable a lesson a book contains. Codependent No More. How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. This book is very popular, and it says 25th anniversary edition. So it's been over 25 years old, and has helped many people. Every single book that I have today they have helped many people, including myself. So codependency, really, as this book defines it, is when you allow someone else's emotions and thoughts and feelings to completely dominate and rule what you believe and allow it to control you. Now, that is my understanding of it. I might have butchered the actual definition of it greatly, but for me, the reason this book was helpful is because, so this book, codependency really became popular because it was an issue that the spouses of alcoholics or other drug addicts would really encounter all the time. So, when someone's addicted to a substance, they can cause a lot of havoc and chaos in the lives of other people. And if those people, the people around the addict, don't have good boundaries, don't know where they end, where the other person begins, what's the addict's responsibility, what's their the spouse's responsibility, for example. When those things are not clear, sometimes a codependent is a person that constantly feels like they are responsible for that addict. They need to control them, they need to control their behavior, their emotions, their everything, their life. And by controlling that other individual, they now control their life. That's like the mentality of a codependent. So it's almost like, I don't have sovereignty and individuality, and I only gain happiness and fulfillment through making somebody else be what I want them to be and act the way I want them to act so that I can feel happy. It's very like, until they change, I can't change. And just saying these things out of my mouth feels like, oh man, someone's going to get offended. because sometimes when I read this book, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's it's those it's those truths that you hear about yourself sometimes that are hard to fathom and understand and hard pills to swallow that are the most helpful and that you most need to hear. Sometimes when I read this book, I'm just like, it's just, if I feel personally attacked, as they say on social media sometimes, but it's so, it just knows, it's almost like it just knows inside you and how you feel and what you think, especially for a lot of type 9s, we tend to have codependent behaviors, right? Because we don't have good boundaries, going back to the book I was just recommending earlier. And so we think that what another person feels is obviously what we feel. And so the more we can make them happy, the more we can be happy. And the other person does not need to be an alcoholic. It can just be anybody that you're super close to. And as long as you, type 9s use people pleasing a lot, as long as you people please them, then you're good. If they're happy, you're happy. And you're constantly stuck in this game of, I am a victim to them, right? To their moods, to their actions, to their behaviors. A lot of this book is also, saying again, repeating what the book Boundaries talks about. But it says it from a very different point of view, similar but different point of view. And sometimes we need the same concepts, the same essential truths told to us in different ways because it digests in different ways. But I can make an entire video about just this book alone. I haven't even finished it yet, so I'm sorry that I'm recommending a book I haven't finished, but I'm almost finished with it, and it's every chapter, even if you read one chapter of this, it can change your life forever. It's so powerful. I can't say enough good things about it, and just holding it in my hand right now feels like an honor because it's like holding something that for a fact has changed many people's lives, and there's power in that. Can't recommend it enough. Please check this one out. If you don't check other one of these books out, this, if you're gonna just check one out, this is the one. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop talking about it because otherwise I won't be able to. Okay, I felt like I have to say one more thing about this and why I feel like this book is so powerful. Codependent No More. I want people, who listen to these videos, to watch these videos, to ultimately feel freedom. Feel freedom from their own personality types, entrapments, and patterns that are not helping them and serving them. And I know this book can bring that freedom for a lot of people, especially a lot of type 9s, because we tend to be codependents often. We really want to keep the peace, keep other people happy, and think that if they are not happy, then we are not happy or we shouldn't be happy. This book will give you that freedom to be your own person. And I want all of these books, and the work for a lot of type 9s is to become our own people, our own person. Not who other people want us to be, not what the world says you should be, not who people closest to us say we should be or should act like. Who do we want to be? The freedom that you gain from being true to yourself and living that out is a freedom that will bring true peace. Because as long as you're playing the game of let me be who others want me to be, you're always at the mercy of other people's validation and approval of you. And that's not freedom, that's enslavement. And that's something that I feel like as humanity we are starting to grow out of. For many years people had to conform, had to be who the society wanted them to be. But with the internet, with all the awesome technology that we have now, we are starting to be able to be more ourselves and have that be okay. And this book can help you on that journey of becoming your authentic best self. Next book. The next book is an audiobook that I read. Audiobook that I listened to. And this audiobook brought me, so let me preface this by saying in Enneagram, each type goes to another type or starts becoming similar to another type in times of integration or in health, or goes to another type or starts becoming similar to another type in times of disintegration or stress. So the types that type 9 goes to in stress and in health, in stress it goes to type 6, and it becomes very doubtful, very uncertain. Imagine, type 9s can already be uncertain. So imagine becoming even more stressed and even more unsure and uncertain. It's just it's just an awful experience for type 9s, and I've gone through it. And it's everything but peaceful, and in health, type 9s go to 3, so become very, very active. When they move to 3, basically, that's as a result of them becoming aware of their own desires and preferences and goals and ambitions and purpose, and then having what they call, the virtue of type 9 is right action. They know the right thing that they want, that's right for them, and they're going to now take action. So they're going to that 3, becoming very action oriented, and it's a beautiful space for us type 9s to be. It's very fulfilling that now you've become clear. Okay, now I'm clear. This is who I am. This is what I want. Now I'm going to go after it. It's almost like a miracle when that happens for type 9, because you've gotten so used to, if you're in the average level or unhealthy levels of your type, you've gotten used to just going with what everybody else wants, never asking yourself, what do you want? What do you think? What do you think your life is all about? And just going with the flow of, unhealthily going with the flow. Going with the flow is a great thing, but when you're just going with the flow and are completely unaware of who you are and what you want, that's not healthy. That's unhealthy. And so when it's becoming healthy, it's going to that type 3. It's clear, it's taking action, and it's just awesome. And that's how every type feels when they go to their integration. It just feels awesome. It feels empowering. It feels freeing. It feels like you're literally breaking the chains of your personality and just getting out of it and moving forward. So that's all great and dandy, and hopefully with these books you can step into that right action. That's the whole goal. It's to help type 9 step into that right action. Go slowly, slowly but surely move towards becoming your own person, developing your own sense of boundaries and purpose and mission, and then taking action towards accomplishing your mission in this life. So that's great, but the type 6 move, when it goes to type 6 and stress, that just feels awful. And sometimes that whole move, move to type 6 or move to type 3, that whole thing can take seconds, but sometimes it can take months, weeks, years. I probably should have said weeks, months, years, but I knew that it definitely can take months, because it did for me. And when you go to that stress point, basically what that means is you are now becoming aware of certain truths that have been in your blind spot. And they are tough pills to swallow when you start seeing certain things about yourself that you were completely unaware of. And the goal is to become aware and then go into action. Become aware, face what you need to face your shadow, really, what has been in your shadow, the things that you have been unaware of, and then get into right action. And so for me, basically, what I went through was a couple-month period where I realized I'm not living my life for myself. Not like in a selfish way. Selfishness gets a bad rep sometimes, but there is a healthy awareness of self. Being aware of what you want. What are you even in this life for? What is your purpose? What drives you? What motivates you? What are you inspired by? What are the gifts you are here to give? Becoming aware of those, you can say that's healthy I don't even want to say selfishness, but it's healthy self-awareness. You're becoming self-aware. Sometimes type 9s can be unaware of their self and think that's great and selfless, and you're serving, but you're not your own person at all. You're not aware of who you are. And so life, when it moves you to type 6, is trying to make you aware of what you haven't been seeing. And a lot of times what the type 9s have not been seeing is who they are. They've been seeing what everybody else wants and what everybody else thinks and what they believe and what they want. They know that really well. They know what everybody else wants, but they don't know what they want. So when you're going to type 6, it's life saying, hey, okay, now you haven't been facing that. You haven't been asking yourself, what do you want? Now we're going to make you ask yourself, what do you want? Why are you here? And as unpleasant as that experience is, it contains gifts that continue it's a tree that continues bearing fruit. It's a work that's, shadow work sucks, but it's so impactful and helpful. And if you want to learn more about shadow work, my girlfriend actually has a free online course on it that I'll tag that in the description box on this video. So check that out if you want to do shadow work. But basically for me, life forced me to ask myself, what do I want? But until I really become aware of why I'm even feeling so much distress, until I can put my finger on it, I was completely in a victim mentality mode for like a 2 or 3 month period where I was just like, I've been, living my life for other people. They taking advantage of me. I'm a victim. Da da da. Like all the things that I have done myself, but I was like pointing the blame. I was angry, and type 9s. They are part of the anger triad. They are part of the body types of the Enneagram, which are the type 8, type 9, and 1. And they are so disconnected from their anger. At least the 8s express their anger. The 1s shove down their anger, but they're aware of their anger. Type 9s just become unaware. They just shut off that feeling, the impulse to anger, and then they just become like, oh, I'm just a peaceful person. But they're like completely turning off the anger signal, that sometimes the anger signal can have a lot of great messages for type 9s. So it's important to be in touch with that anger, because it's not to express it, but it's to maybe express it in healthy ways, but it's pointing you towards something. It's trying to get you to see something. And for me, when I was unaware of all this that was happening, for me, I was just angry and I couldn't really understand why. But I was in a victim mentality. I was angry, I was hurt, I was sad, I was depressed, I was all these things when I was in my stress point until, and the reason this audiobook is so impactful in this journey is because it was until I listened to this book that I was like, just something went on. A light came on in my mind. I was like, oh my God, I've been, completely playing the victim, completely not, facing my stuff. And yet in this book, I was like, this book it's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. It's probably like the #1 selling book on audiobook on Audible last year. I don't know how many books have that many 5-star ratings from that many people, but this book has just raving reviews and everything because it's so powerful and it's from true experience. It's not somebody just saying, I've just studied this, which that's great too, don't get me wrong, but it's from personal experience of this man, like overcoming some of the most like just horrible situations, and not choosing to play the victim in the end. He did go through his own victim mentality at times, but he overcame all that. David Goggins, when I was reading, it's basically like a biography of his life, and combined with lessons that he learned from these different experiences that he shares. Like he's gone through like the Navy SEALs training, which is like the hardest training in the world, 3 times. 3 times. 1 time of buds is enough. 3 times he's gone through it. And he had a very abusive father from an early age that would, he was hitting his mom, if I remember correctly. And so as a child, you know how traumatic, you can imagine how traumatic that can be, or you might unfortunately know how traumatic that can be personally in your own life. But ultimately choosing not to be a victim of those circumstances, which is what David Goggins chose to not do, victimize himself, that was just so life-giving for me to read and listen to. And it started a fire inside me, and a good fire. Like, if this guy faced these circumstances and decided not to be a victim, who am I to victimize myself? Like, what I'm going through is not even 1% as awful as this, and I'm victimizing myself. I have no reason. And it pushed me towards right action, towards initiative, towards action. And so it was so empowering. It was a gift from God to me when I stumbled upon that book, and it changed everything. It got me facing my stuff, dealing with my issues, and slowly but surely it pushed me and moved me in the right direction towards becoming clear about who I am, and then being willing to take action to make my dreams a reality. So can't recommend and thank David Goggins enough for that book, because he said, he was so far away from that unpleasant reality that used to be his life, and had gotten out of it for so many years, but to have to write this book and go back into the swamp, as he called it, get back in that pain and bring these gems out of it, bring it out for us to see so that we can learn from his experience. It was very painful for him to have to do that, but he did it because nothing can hurt him. And because he faced that and he did that, he gave us this book as a gift of facing his own shadow and painful memories. And so I can't thank him enough. He's probably not going to watch this ever, but if ever somehow he does, thank you, David Goggins, for that book. It truly changed my life. So on to the next books. This is probably the longest book, not probably. This is the longest video in this series that I have made. But as a type 9, I just felt like, I don't mind the video being long, but as long as it can help people, I wanted to do that. So as long as it takes to make sure I get all these books and hopefully talk enough good about them that inspires you to check them out, because I truly believe they can change your life. So I'm going to go maybe a little bit faster through the next few books, and then we'll wrap up this series. And I'll just go ahead and thank you for checking it out if you have been following the series so far. So the next book is by one of my favorite people, one of my favorite, how do you describe them? Influencers, entrepreneurs, artists, creatives online. His name is Chase Jarvis. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him at Summit of Greatness by Lewis Howes in 2018. And it was just, it was a true joy to get to meet one of the people that I've been inspired by for a few years now. He has a book, this is the next book I'm going to recommend. It's called Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. I've listened to the audiobook, and I love when authors narrate their own books, which is what he does in this one. But the reason I want to recommend this book is because one of the biggest tasks for type 9s to do is to understand what their calling is. What do they want to do in this life? What is their purpose? And I remember one time someone asked me, like, what do you want? And I went on and explained to them this what I thought I want. Which the question alone was startling. When I heard it, I was like, whoa, like, I didn't think I would be so shocked to be asked that and then have to answer that. But it was one of those things that it was a gift to be asked that question. It is definitely a gift that people around type 9s can give them on a frequent basis. If they ask them, hey, is this what you really want? What do you want, or what do you think? Give them that opportunity to express that, because you might not realize how big of a gift that could be to a type 9, as it was for me when someone asked that. And out of all people, it was just a cab driver driving me to the airport this last summer, and he just asked me that, just nonchalantly. And then I went on and explained to him kind of like the dreams that the place I was working at the time, like the goals of the company. And then he was like, no, 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 what do you want? Don't tell me what the company wants and what, you guys are going to go achieve, your team is going to go achieve. What do you want? And I was like, that's when it really set in the reality that, wow, I am not living for myself. I am living other people's dreams. Which doesn't mean that what other people want is bad, but it has to be yours, right? It has to be your dreams. You are here to live this life, and you are given the gifts, the desires, the purpose for your life. I believe that a divine, creator, God, source, created us, and He gave us a purpose. He gave us a mission. Now, whatever your belief is, I really don't feel like that changes, the reality that we all have a purpose. We all have a mission. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I feel like that. I feel like our souls came to Earth because they had a purpose, they had a function, they had a mission that they wanted to carry out. They had a calling, and our job is to discover that calling and then live that calling out. And that's why this book, Creative Calling, really helped me ask myself, what do I want, and how can I start taking action and initiative and move towards that? Because Chase Jarvis's story really reminded me of myself and his personality too. But he really reminded me of myself in terms that he was living other people's dreams for his life for a long time. He at first was like a really good soccer player, and then I think he decided to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that requires like a lot of graduate school and things like that. And one day he, I say one day, but I mean over a course of time, he realized like this is not his passion. He's really good at doing it. He's really good at accomplishing it and achieving the goals that are set for him by other people's expectations. He's really good at getting stuff done, and he can be successful at those things. But is that what he really wants? And it wasn't. He wanted to be a photographer. He wanted to be an artist. He wanted to be a creative. And so he was like, you know what? I've spent all this time studying all these things, practicing these things that are not really my true calling. But the sooner or whenever you start, it's better than, on your creative calling journey. Whenever you start, it's better than not starting at all. To me, what would be super regretful is to lay on my deathbed and think, man, I didn't live my creative calling. I didn't live my life and my purpose out. I didn't do the work to discover it and then live it out. To me, that would be a very painful, regretful thing to live through. So for me, I always want to make sure that what I'm living out is like my purpose, my destiny, my creative calling. And this book, hearing Chase's story and how he had already sacrificed, the sunk cost was already a lot. He had already spent so much time and so much energy and so much money on these other tasks and callings, and not callings, but tasks and journeys. But they weren't his. So he still chose to pursue his creative calling, even though he had already given all that. And he decided that's worth more. Living that creative calling out is worth more. And it was so inspiring for me, essentially like seeing how much success he has achieved, but success that he's achieved doing what he wants, because he could have been successful doing what other people wanted. He was good at those other things too, but it wasn't what he wanted. And so just because he could have been successful at these other callings doesn't mean he would have been fulfilled having done so. And so it's just a very great inspiring story by a phenomenal man that I think you guys would benefit a lot from checking it out. Or if you don't want to, just go ahead and buy the book off the bat, just go and check some of his videos out. He has a lot of awesome podcast interviews and just different videos that he's made for people all about creativity and finding your calling, and they're all so phenomenal. Now, since we are on the topic of creativity, how can I ever have a conversation on creativity, on being taking initiative in your life without mentioning this book. So the next book is called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I've already recommended this book a decent amount of times in this series, or a book by Steven Pressfield, because I love this man and his books. But The War of Art was one of those books that, it gave me a superpower because it allowed me to really take initiative and get stuff done. Because for type 9, sometimes taking initiative and getting stuff done and making stuff happen, um, it feels like a superpower. Because for so long you've kind of learned to go with the flow and just let other people make the decisions, and you just do what is asked of you. But to take initiative, that just feels so empowering for type 9s. And that's what The War of Art, it's written for artists and entrepreneurs and anybody deciding to do anything creative with their lives. It's written for those people, but really we're all creating our lives. Our life is a creative expression, if we so choose it to be. Doesn't mean you have to go paint or write a book or make a video or so on and so forth. Living a life that you have, that you've decided to live, that's a creative task. Because a lot of us, it's almost like other people decide for us what we should do with our lives, and we just do it. It's almost like we don't take any creative initiative. Like, just because so many people have followed this path doesn't mean that's my path. And so doing the work to clarify your path and then face the obstacles of accomplishing your mission and your purpose and your creative calling. The obstacles are many, are plentiful, but they all can come down to one thing that the Steven Pressfield identifies in The War of Art, and he puts this umbrella term, resistance. Resistance can take many forms. It's basically all the obstacles that we're going to encounter on our creative calling, on our work, as he calls it. And to know that we are indeed in a war, anytime we try to improve our lives, we try to do something creative, we try to move what he calls from like a lower state of like evolution and consciousness to a higher state. We aspire to start a business, write a book, lose weight, whatever thing that's gonna move us from this lower level to a higher level. Whenever we decide to take that step, resistance is like what is in between. On the journey, resistance is the part of us that hates change, hates us growing. So it's almost like it employs all these different tactics to keep us from evolving. And it's almost like it's our ego's way of wanting to keep us stuck to what it knows and is familiar to the ego. So resistance is what all these things that we're going to face. And by Steven Pressfield identifying those elements and talking about them and sharing his own experience of fighting them and overcoming them, he loves to like speak about things from a very like Spartan war, Greek mythology kind of way. He has a huge affinity with that kind of ancient culture of like Sparta and the warrior spirit. And so he speaks about fighting and overcoming and winning against the resistance and the battle, and he talks about those terms a lot. But really, it's true. Like, it's a battle. We are fighting a fight against resistance, and it's our creative calling requires us to overcome that to accomplish our mission, our calling. And so check that book out for type 9s. It can be so helpful. And it certainly was monumental in my journey. It gave me another tool in my toolkit of accomplishing things that proved to be tremendously useful and valuable. So that's The War of Art. Now, this next book is a book I've already recommended to type 1s and type 7s, but I'm going to recommend it here again to type 9s, because based on what I was just talking about, based on what I said about creative calling, pursuing what you are here to do, what the gift that you are on this planet at this time to give to the world, that creative calling, your mission, your function that you're here to fulfill, when you're on that journey, when you are trying to do that, when you're trying to authentically put yourself out there and share your gifts with the world and pursue your creative calling, one thing that you might encounter is, criticism and feelings of shame and feelings of unworthiness. And if you are a perfectionist, a lot of times what tends to happen is that you are a perfectionist in order to avoid shame and criticism and guilt. So it's almost like you're actually making yourself more prone to all those negative feelings that you don't want to experience: shame, guilt, and so on and so forth. And this book, The Gifts of Imperfection by Bernay Brown. Bernay Brown is a shame researcher. So she studies shame for a living and then talks about it. And she talks about all the forms that it can take. And so this book, the reason I wanted to recommend it is because as you go through your journey of expressing your creative calling, of living your life authentically, after you have established good boundaries, after you have gotten present, after you have overcome codependent tendencies, and after you have overcome any sort of feelings of victim mentality, and you have discovered your creative calling, and now you're going to take action. You have read the War of Art. You now know the battle that you will be in as you pursue your creative calling and face resistance. Now you're putting yourself out there. Now you might get negative feedback, as anyone will when they put themselves authentically out there. And if you haven't created and developed the sense of what Bernay Brown calls shame resilience, you won't have the necessary toolkit to feel shame, to see it come up, to see it try to attack you and take you down with it, because shame really aims to make you feel like you are not worthy of belonging and connection and really love. Ultimately, you're not worthy of love. It's what it's trying to tell you. And having the toolkit that is contained within this book, this little book, it's not too long, but it's very impactful. Having that toolkit really allows you to overcome and stand up to shame and say, I will choose authenticity, and I will choose, putting myself out there, even though it might be imperfect, because there's no such thing as perfection. And even though I might get, attacked and, put down, and shame will come up, I will have the shame resilience, and I will continue to be vulnerable, because I believe that is worth it, that is valuable. A life that is lived authentically and vulnerably will lead, and it's the only way that it will lead to a wholehearted life, to a life that's full of connection, full of joy, full of fulfillment, full of purpose. So I think that's it for today. I'm not sure if I recommended every single book that I had on my list, but it's already, these books that I've already talked about are so phenomenal and incredible and powerful that either one of them, any one of them, can completely transform your life. And as a Type 9, to all of our Type 9 listeners, I just want you to one day look at your life and say, I chose that life. I chose to live my life on my own terms, based on my own values, based on what I desired for my life, and based on what I believe is my unique purpose and calling in this life, and based on understanding what is the gift that you are here to give. Because the sad reality for a lot of Type 9 individuals is that they might go their life on autopilot, or allowing other people to drive their car, telling them what to do and what to pursue in their life, and what is a worthwhile belief to have, what is not. Just everything is dictated to them by other people versus them deciding for themselves. But a lot of times the reason they are putting off deciding for themselves is because deep down they think that they think they're not good enough to choose their own values and live their own life. They think that other people are better than them, and they should be the ones deciding for them. But that's not true. Nobody's better or lower than anybody else. We are all on an even playing ground. And for type 9 individuals, what we need to hear is that your life, your mission, your purpose matters. What you are here to do matters. You matter. And what you feel deep down in your heart is the right action for you to take, it matters. Pursue that. Don't put off living your life for any longer than you already have. You are worthy of a purposeful, meaningful life. And my hope is that these books will help you live that life. So thank you guys for bearing with me in the longest video that I have made, but I truly felt like this topic, these books, Enneagram, and the lessons that I've learned from these books is worth any second that I spend, talking to you about them in the hopes that you check these out, because I know and I believe that they can truly change your life. As thrown around as that term is, but it's true. It could change your life, and you could wake up a few months, a year, few years, from now and say, man, doing that work of waking up to myself, waking up to my own dreams and desires and wishes and preferences for my life, as hard as that was in the beginning, it was the most worthwhile task that I ever took on. And so I hope you enjoy it, and if this video was helpful for you in any way, please like it. That means a lot to me. And subscribe if you would like to see more videos about the Enneagram and other things that I come across that I believe can help us live a more wholehearted life. Thank you, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.